Yeah, it's Nicola. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody to episode 3. Hitting
Wow.
some strides now. There we go. Yeah, it's happening.
Good stuff.
So yeah, welcome Andres to episode 3 and the podcast to talk about yourself. Obviously, greatly appreciate you coming along and giving your insights into your world. I think, which is from the first 2 people who have come on, is probably drastically different, I suppose. But you can give yourself a bit of an introduction and just get into the chat.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Andres Alcoba. I'm an engineer. I work for a company that does mechanical services in New Zealand, Auckland. Been doing that for about 15 years, maybe. I came into New Zealand about 13 years ago with doing sort of like an OE, and I sort of stayed and sort of dived further into working into this company. I think it's been quite interesting to see the changes for us coming and migrating to New Zealand and living in here and starting a life. It's been quite different, starting a family without our own family, I suppose.
Yes, well, it's actually an interesting thing, I suppose. Before we started this, we had a little catch up and we are just talking about how COVID has sort of impacted, I suppose, a lot of people in your position where you can't see your parents for, quite a few years. And I think there was some contentious times during that when there was a trip back. But yeah, it's interesting how things change, isn't it, for migrants, I suppose, moving around the world and the challenges that we never thought.
I always get the feeling people. Sorry, there was a bit of a lag there.
Yeah,
I was saying there's interesting some different people see you living overseas and they feel like, oh, it's great, and living overseas has its challenges, and being away from family is one of those challenges. But it's once you weigh it out and you see what do you care the most about, and for us it was raising our own family in a place that we felt comfortable, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly right. It's interesting when you get obviously kids, and it changes your whole outlook on life, so you can sort of understand from your parents' point of view to some degree, that you want them to sort of flourish and be free and make them for themselves, but at the same time you also don't leave me.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like a further distance, like obviously, well, I'm now in Sydney and New Zealand's just like a 3.5 hour trip. It's just over the ditch, they call it. It's easy, yeah. So there's a few more strategic nightmares to get to South America. Yeah. It's a few flights away.
Yeah, it's a few flights away.
So how did you find? Obviously, you've moved mechanical engineering. So you studied abroad and then restudied here. What was your pathway, I suppose?
So I studied. I actually studied industrial engineering, which is sort of process and manufacturing. I did it in Argentina. Degrees in Argentina are very different than in New Zealand. An engineering degree is about 6 years in uni.
Does that mean it's better, or it's just different?
I think it is probably in some instances a bit more thorough, and in some instances it's a little bit more global. My degree in particular, I think everyone defines industrial engineers as people with an ocean of knowledge that is about an inch deep, because we touch a little bit of everything, but really they don't dive too much into anything. So I don't need a registration for what I do. I worked in manufacturing for BDAV for a couple of years, and then I started to work for my dad. He owned a mechanical services contracting company back home. So I worked for him for a couple of years, and that's when I decided to do an OE, come to New Zealand, and got a job at a mechanical services company. And it was actually pretty easy. The migration process was not too bad. Got a visa. I managed to bring my partner with a partner visa, and she could do whatever she wanted. I was sort of like I had the slave visa. I had to work with this company, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And about a year in, they asked me if I wanted to stay, and I think at that time my dad was visiting, and I said to my dad, "I think I'm not coming back home," and he gave me the looks. Well, he sort of expected me to go back and look after his business or the family business, and I kind of put that aside to start my own project or my own life. Yeah, and doing engineering in here, I suppose the challenges were mainly the language. Obviously, I speak Spanish, and I studied English all my life at school, but it's kind of weird when you start living in a country that is an English-speaking language. You go, oh, I actually learned how to watch movies in English and maybe ask for directions or order at a restaurant in English. And when you live in English, that was interesting, challenging. I think the first few months, my brain just was hurting by the time I got home because I was translating all the time.
And also trying to do some work, I suppose, at the same time with
Yeah,
English.
it's relearning your own job in a different language and talking to people all the time and all the time having to think. I mean, I think that for me, the two key things were arguing. Part of my job is to argue, and when you need to think and then translate, you actually lose a bit of the edge that you can have in an argument. So that was really hard.
Should we call it constructive conversations?
Constructive conversations, indeed.
It's an interesting point. And I'll probably throw out multiple podcasts. It's one of the best books I read. It's about a guy. His name is Ray Diola, and he owns he started one of the first hedge fund in the world, and he's got a book called Principles, mate. Amazing, he's like, I think he's 70 now, but it's about his whole life, and he's put it into a book about what he sort of talks about. And he goes, the thing is, it's about having constructive conversations. He goes, you go into a difficult conversation and you have to make sure that, because he owned his own business, that everybody was on the same page. So they put rules around how you actually have a conversation so you actually get the best outcome. So it's very interesting when you think about it like that. You're not going into something to battle someone to, sort of get ahead of them or over them. You get your way is the best way. So I'd put that. And it's about what the best outcome for the whole situation is. But yeah, so it's interesting in our sort of line of work because coming from a trade background and obviously now living in projects and facilities, you feel like you have to argue with people to get the point. Like it's a weird way to put it, but it is. It's a reality in this type of world.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's not for everyone because you actually, I mean, half of the times you actually go to battle for something, and even when it's not even your best interest in someone else's best interest, but you kind of have to go and battle for it.
You do, yeah, and then it all comes back to contracts and money, and it's the world we built for ourselves is an interesting beast, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, indeed.
Juggle the balls at all times. So, because you went from mechanical engineering into more the servicing aspect of it, what was the difference, I suppose, from industrial to more? I'm assuming it was the HVAC type arrangement in your father's company.
Yep. So when I was working for my dad, I was doing projects, same. The technology or the type of systems we use in Argentina are a bit different than what we do in my current company. So we used a lot of direct expansion systems, and that was sort of the bread and butter. And when I came here, the biggest change was starting to work with bigger pipes and chilled water and chillers and whatnot. So that was a bit of a learning process to learn how to order stuff and dealing with accents. I think one of the most beautiful things about New Zealand is no one is from New Zealand. Everyone's from abroad. and that is a challenge when you're migrating because you're dealing with 30 different accents, so talking to people was hard.
It's a very good question. I always wonder, because I speak English as my first language. My wife says it's very poor at best, and swear words are adjectives. If you talk to, say, a New Zealander or in Australia, is that similar? But then if you talk to, say, potentially someone from, say, South Africa, because they've got quite a thick accent, is it drastically different? Like you definitely notice it?
Yes, definitely, absolutely. Yeah, I think the worst thing for me was my first week. We have a bit of a rule at the company, so when we start working, you actually have to go to site and work on the tools.
Yeah.
So I was paired up with an Irish foreman and a Maori supervisor, and I think for the first 2 weeks I was just nodding, half knowing what they were saying. I was kind of getting the gist of where it was going, but I didn't really fully understand them.
Just two totally different, like
and it's very, very. I mean, the
quick.
Maori accent was new to me. I have heard it before. I suppose the Irish I would have heard of it and movies or whatnot, but talking full on with an Irish was really hard. So I think from the get go, you kind of get all of that exposure and you start learning the different accents. So that was very interesting and challenging. And even for me, I think one of the things that I realized over the first 2 years was, as I was saying before, at some point I stopped thinking in Spanish and my brain just switched. And I started like having dreams in English or doing math in English. That's when I went, cool, this is it. And then probably after a year and a half, I sort of reached a level with English that I could manage, and I didn't have any troubles explaining myself or living or having small talk. Small talk is actually really hard. And talking technical stuff, you know your words, but asking about someone's life, you go like, it's actually really hard to fill in those gaps. And it is part of my job. My job is mainly to talk to people. And I think, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm interrupted. Continue.
I think one of the things I found was probably over the first 2 years, my level of English increased drastically, and it sort of got to sort of plateaued, and I got to a point where I can get by, and I still have some serious grammatical mistakes that they just stay there, and I can't get rid of them because I get by. Everyone understands me. It probably sounds a bit funny, and everyone's happy with it, but everyone gets it. And that was probably one of the things that I regret. I remember when we initially got here, we were getting together with groups of people from different countries to practice small talk. And I think I probably should have done that a bit more because I think vocabulary-wise, it would have improved my language a lot more. So now it's really for me to do more reading. I'm doing a lot of reading with the kids now. They're starting to learn that. So I'm hoping I'll be picking up some vocabulary there.
Good luck. You're probably better than me. So I said, I'm better with numbers than everything else, to be honest. An interesting point is when you move to New Zealand, because this is normally what happens. You sort of navigate to an area which normally has people from the same country. Did you find that was, and obviously helping promote English and integrate into the society? Did you find that was I wouldn't say a problem, but because it makes you feel comfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you kind of want to find. I mean, as I said before, it was really hard. It was actually hard on the brain. So we came here because a friend of ours had been here for a number of years, and she said, "You guys need to come and give it a go." We actually tried to come with a working holiday visa, and I got it, but my wife didn't because there's only a number of spots available, and that's when we changed the way we came. And I got a working visa, and she got a partner visa, and we sort of fell into this group of people that already were my mates, and it felt comfortable, because after a week of thinking hard in English, I could just talk Spanish for 3 hours. That it wasn't just with my wife. So
and
we definitely gravitated into that, but that also slowed down our process of improving our English. So it's a good thing because it makes it easy. It makes you feel more at home, I suppose, but it also slows you down and getting rid of the thinking in a different language.
The thing is, though, I think if you don't have that balance, like you have to have your social, you do. Like coming here has been challenging with the kids, and obviously we have some friends there from our first stint, but it's just navigating life in general is not easy.
And also kids, as the kids change age, you probably your life goes a little bit around.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So, and I was thinking about this the other day. It pops into my brain every now and again. Like, I remember back when they used to do psychological testing for jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
Just, I don't understand. Like, it makes sense that they do it, but it's still bullshit. Psychometric testing, I think they call it. And there's a question I always answered. It's like, they ask is, do you change yourself when you're around different people? And I always thought no. And I probably didn't when I was younger. But as you get older, you sort of do. You have to navigate how people interact and what that looks like. And it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? And moving here, you sort of have to be a bit more, careful because people are different, culturally. Everything's a bit more diverse. And you just don't know people's backgrounds. And I love to just talk about anything and normally don't care. But you just take a step back, you go, I do, mold myself to a conversation or a person to make sure I don't, have a bad impact.
Yep. Well, and again, I suppose that multicultural thing of New Zealand, probably Sydney or places like London, you get exposure to very different cultures. And it was funny. I had a friend of mine. She was taking a test to transfer she's something medicine. She needed to transfer her license, and one of the exams that she had to do was about learning cultures and learning things like you can't touch the head of people from certain cultures, so you can't touch their shoulders. And for me, I come from South America, man. I will hug you, and if I get drunk, I'll hug you, and we'll dance together. And that's how we relate to people. And you go, oh, what do you mean? I can't touch you. I can't hug you. It's like it feels strange, but it's about learning the other people's way of living, I suppose.
I've got a great story on that. I don't know if I should talk about it. Well, I will, because it was amazing. We ended up in Paris. It was so hot, me and the wife just together, and we went up to the Moulin Rouge area, and we walked to a place and we had a drink, and we left. It was so hot. We came back. Actually, sorry, earlier we'd been on this boat cruise, just smashing wine for lunch, so we're a little bit tipsy. Ended up at this place, and these guys were there. We came back and started talking to them. Like, oh, what are you doing? They're like, I actually am the prospect for the Hells Angels. There was another guy, and he was what do you call it, a legal executive, which because Crystal was doing law at that stage. It was quite interesting. We started talking. What an evening. We ended up in the middle of somewhere, no idea, at his mate's bar, which was the Hells Angel, and some Australians were playing like string instruments, the violin and not a harp, what they called the big bass and stuff like that. It was amazing. But yeah, about people's space, I get drunk and I'm quite friendly. And I'm behind the bar taking pictures. So you can't do that. So I was like, what up? I'm everybody's friend. It was gotta learn these things. Don't drink too much in Paris.
Yeah.
It's good to have those stories. But yeah, amazing people. It was a journey. I'll never forget it.
I bet you not. I bet you won't.
I lost some sunglasses and we missed a train the next day to get them on again. But anyway, it was still fun. Story.
Good.
So we digress anyway. We'll move back into your engineering world, shall we? So what obviously doing engineering in 2 different countries, and you've obviously done it for a while now. How do you feel? How do you feel about it? What would you say to people that, or kids, or even people that are adults? People can retrain and do things differently. What would you sort of advice would you give to people? Would you go, yes, it's a career for you, and it's the best way to navigate it, I suppose, now because things evolve, don't they?
Yeah. I'll sort of answer in two parts. I think the biggest difference between me doing my job in Argentina and me doing my job in New Zealand is the labor is very different. Labor is very cheap in Argentina. We are a third world country, and so we do a lot of things by hand because buying equipment is very expensive. Whereas in New Zealand, everything's done with machinery because labor is very expensive. So for me, coming here and learning the use of new tools or the use of materials that were a bit different was kind of a change. Not too hard to get through, I suppose. I mean, at the end of the day, the engineering principles of what we do are the same, and I honestly think that a trained monkey can do my job. It's not rocket science, and you just need to know a couple of basic things, and anyone can do it. It's honest. I mean, I think that what makes people better or worse at in our industry is the way they deal with people and the way they deal with problems. Obviously, experience is relevant, but you can learn. Anyone can learn. I've managed to meet you through a line of work that I hadn't done a lot on before, and in the last 3 years I've been doing quite a lot in that line of work, and it's been very interesting. And I suppose the first year was probably the hardest for me, but after that it just flows. You just get to learn again. You learn the new machinery, learn, and you just get by. And then yeah,
I think that's a very good point for I think it's everybody in general. Myself going through, I suppose coming off the tools and going into facilities management and at a younger age. It's the biggest step is actually just changing your mindset to actually give something a go. And a lot of people talk about failure and fear, and it's a massive thing in life. But the thing is, when you're in a good company and obviously you're in your same position, they're not going to throw you into something to let you fail like massively. You got to put boundaries around the stuff. There's always going to be support. So if you're in that position, you're always going to come out on the best side of it. And you're going to learn a lot, and you will. I'm not calling it failing because it is. There'll be some, we'll call it about positive reinforcement. You're going to learn a lot by not doing things exactly right. And you have to do it to learn. It's just one of those things, isn't it? So it's a great thing to point out. And you guys do a lot of work with, younger guys and bring them up to speed. Yeah. So,
we try to take at least one young graduate every year and sort of bring them up the ranks. And some stay with us. Some have been with us for 5-6 years. Some have gone from a graduate to a business owner. And I think to me the greatest thing is for them to understand that the first couple of years they're actually being paid to make mistakes, and that's fine. It's fine. They're expected to make mistakes. The only thing that I usually try to make and get them to make an effort on is, if you make a mistake, first thing that I would want you to do is to acknowledge it as a mistake. Because if you blame it on someone else or try to find it, you're not really gonna learn about it, and you're gonna repeat it. So owning your own mistakes and fixing them, that's how you learn. I remember when I was working for my dad, my boss let me design a system, not completely wrong, but I designed a way around not buying some fancy controllers. And he went, yeah, okay, yeah, go for it. And he knew it was going to fail. And so when I went to commission it, it failed massively. And he goes, cool, what are you going to do now? So within 2 weeks, I had to come up with a solution and work my ass to try to understand how to fix it. And it was great because I actually understood what this fancy system did, and I had to do it myself. So I think making mistakes is probably, that's how we learn as a race, isn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, having kids, you notice that a lot more. Like
Yeah.
they have to try things and like, oh, that's hot, don't touch it. Oh, that's hot, don't touch it. Well, you've touched it, it's hot.
Which is a good.
Yeah.
No
Well,
surprise.
you have to. Yeah, exactly right. You have to. Sometimes you have to get to that point. But if you continue to touch the whole thing, then there's a problem, I suppose. You may need to talk to someone.
Yeah, well, we are the only species that will trip on the same rock a few times.
Yes. That's exactly right. We shouldn't, but we do, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. And, obviously I came and had a bit of a chat to the younger people, which was nice. It's good to impart knowledge. And, the whole point of this is to impart knowledge to, people out there, give them a bit of an insight into people's different worlds and, how to navigate a bit of life, I suppose. Because it's not easy at all, really. I'm still young and got many years to go. I get told by a lot of people, but yeah, you're still like, how much more is there to learn? But yeah, who was I talking to the other day? He said, what did he say? I also got one of the fathers at school who was talking about, when you grow up and you become an adult. I was like, yeah, mate, I still haven't worked out how to be an adult. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if I will ever. What is this concept? What's the mold? Yeah. Is there a point where you go, yeah, I sort of am, and I need to do this. I pay bills, owning houses, having kids. I don't know. It's challenging. So with your, I know a bit more about your structure of your business. So others do not. So there's multiple different owners within the company. We won't go too in depth into it, but I suppose because a lot of people get into this situation where there is different owners in the company, and people can buy into a company with already existing owners that they may not know. So what advice would you potentially give in that situation? What have you found to be a good way to navigate that?
I think my current business partners said something to me before I joined. So I basically worked for this company for 6 years, and then I got to a point where I needed a break. There was a job that almost broke me, and I kind of stopped enjoying what I was doing. So I went consulting for 2 years. And 2 years in, I got a phone call from my previous boss, and he goes, look, we wanted to come back. We wanted to buy into the business. And they said something that to me sort of keeps resounding, and getting into a partnership in a business is pretty much like marriage. It's you need to pick a partner that you're going to be happy with. And reality is no one's perfect, right? So it's about finding a balance between the wants of different people that are at different stages in life. And the company that I work, we have different owners. Some of them are actually working their way to retirement. I'm working my way into the company. I'm a minority shareholder, and with the hopes that one day I'll probably get to a percentage that will then allow me to retire, I suppose. But it's a process, right? So we are at the moment we're probably too many owners for the size company, but it's because we are transitioning through. And I suppose it's my advice would be, if you're going into business with someone, you need to know that person. You need to be happy with their good stuff and their bad stuff, and you need to go wide eyes open, because it's still business, and everyone, whether you want it or not, everyone wants to look after themselves before looking after someone else, which is fine. That's a bit of what I was saying before. You have in our business, you have people that are wanting to retire, and if I'd be in their shoes, I'd be wanting to maximize my retirement. Me buying into the business, I want to buy the business as cheaply as I can, because it means I can buy it faster.
Premium.
Yeah. So there's a fine balance. think one of the things I picked up after the first year was whether you want it or not, there's politics everywhere. And I think Kiwis in particular, I think Kiwis struggle with fronting awkward conversations. And my Italian blood, I'm all up for awkward conversations. And as you said before, in a constructive way, I'm happy to have nice arguments so we can get a good outcome, But I think that's something that I think me as a minority has sort of started asking questions like, oh, why do we do this? That probably other people wouldn't have asked because they felt it was awkward. And I think when you ask those questions, you actually end up earning respect rather than having an awkward conversation, because people will acknowledge that, oh, you actually have a point, or you actually are asking a good question. So
no, totally agree. That's a very interesting point, though, isn't it? It comes back to what I was saying before, is that, like, there has to be a common goal. People have to talk about things, but it's interesting, like you actually say that New Zealanders don't like having that conversation. They're more than happy to yell at you out the car window.
Yep.
Beep the horn. But I found that though a lot. And I think it comes back to like leadership, I suppose. There's people that are built to be leaders, and they can have those conversations because that's how you can manage a business and teams and, make it excel. But I found in the past, a lot of people are good at managing good people. They're very bad at managing bad people because they don't want to have the tough conversation. They don't want to structure it. Like you can go into these circles of life and you talk about the conversation circle, and this is how you do it. But at the end of the day, you still have to be honest and true, and you have to have those conversations. You have to make it work. You have to then make sure that person understands it, because problem is in New Zealand also, they only, like, people at the top only get the training and the people at the bottom never get it. So they don't understand how the conversation works or what they're supposed to be delivered. Yep. There's so many gaps, in the whole thing. It's quite frustrating, but at the same time, that it's something that people should probably be taught more at school, is like confrontation management, like, because that's sort of what it is. And just working out how do you have those
life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's life.
Oh. I mean, yeah,
that's having kids.
That's it's just
but it's one of those things. I find I'm obviously very hot-blooded, and I can certainly see that in my boy, and I think it's good to see that someone will stand out and say, I want to stop the ball here and talk about this. I want to do something different.
Exactly right. And the way the world's go now, a lot of people hide behind social media, and like you have to have a resilient. People talk about resilience all the time. There's different levels of resilience, but like take a step back and go, well, actually, this person, can't actually do anything because all they are is a hater. But in real life, when you have a conversation, it has to be that constructive. It needs to come out, and at school, and that's what happens, isn't it? You get people that can't deliver their emotions. Channel is a very good word in that, because they never get that structure. They can't do it when they get older, and it causes issues. And then there's the fear that comes in it too, as well, of having a hard conversation and what's this person going to think of me. And then something that comes up a lot, imposter syndrome. Like most people have imposter syndrome. Like they're like, I shouldn't be in this position. I'm not, so that adds another layer of complexity. If I have this conversation, this person might find out.
And sometimes they just don't want to have that conversation because of that.
Yeah, exactly right. Even though that it's just something that they've I wouldn't say manifested, because that's not correct, but it's inside what you feel. And they've never had that conversation. And that's just being a human, I suppose, at the end of the day. It's a weird world we live in, isn't it? The challenges. And then, living in your sort of dynamic, having engineers, tradies, clients which are professionals, clients which are other levels, potentially government, like it's anyone you could think of could be in that other side of the negotiation or conversation. you've got to be the multiple different facets of, people
One
to
of
be
the
able to.
things that we sort of try to drive on our young guys is a lot of them will come from uni and go like, I want to be a design engineer. That's all I want to do. I'm like, fine, I'll give you all the design work, but we want them to be project managers and deal with people, because just dealing with your engineering problem in your little world, it's not going to get you too far, because the world is about people talking and resolving issues. And I think that facet of our job, where as an engineer and a project manager, you are dealing, as you said, you're dealing with the guys that are doing the job, the guys that are managing the job, the guys that are paying for the job, and being able to have all those hats, I suppose, it's great. And I think it gives them a great ability in the future that they could actually quite easily move career lines, because half of what we all do at work is talking and trying to convince someone of something, right? Isn't it?
No, agree. And as you
People,
said before, it's people are the people that have opportunity, so people move up in the company, people move into their own businesses, people do different things. It's a raft of skill sets, and something it comes back to me. I get these epiphanies, mate. I'll tangent off. It's two companies I think about is McDonald's and Pack and Save supermarkets in New Zealand. What they do is that you get into these companies and you have to start at the bottom. You do every single job until you know how to do everything, and then they potentially will give you an ownership. You'll have a lot of money. So it's a great thing, isn't it? It's sort of what you're talking about. You've got a bit of a feeling for everything, and that you can make it, or you can understand it. You can piece that puzzle together and deliver it.
You can manage a business a lot better if you actually understand. If you understand how it's built from the ground up, because I mean, and you see this a lot in big corporations where they bring someone with banking or finance background to manage an airline, and you go, they have no idea what the business is about, and they may be great at their job, but they don't understand the core values of the actual business. So I think having people that grow with the company, managing the company, and it's an advantage that is priceless, I'd say.
No, I totally agree. There's a couple of pieces to that puzzle as well, isn't there? Because obviously you have a company, but you get outside people like experts to support, certain areas.
Absolutely.
Because you can't know everything. That's just not how it works, And I was thinking about that whole concept of the issue with companies, large companies, is they bring in finance, accounting, lawyer. And then what they do is, because they feel they get people that are similar to them, and they layer more of them in there. And then they're like, knows anything about how this company actually runs. And all you're looking at is a bottom line. And they wonder why they struggle to, adjust things. They throw some marketing spins on stuff. They just cut costs. They don't, it's not a growing company. It's thinning that operational capital
about a certain person having a tenure and wanting their tenure to look better.
Like the government.
It works at every level, mate. It's like The Simpsons.
So they got that same guy that's got the book, old Ray. He a great principle. They found that this was a problem, that people, they were making teams to go into pitches and do different types of structures, different projects, and they couldn't understand, like the people like senior leaders in the team were like, we've got this team, we don't understand why we're not getting the outcomes. So they sat back and they sat down and went, well, all of the people around you have the same skill sets. What are you doing? He's like, no, I have the skill set. Here's that. And they're like, no, you've all got the same skill sets. So people don't actually take a step back and go, well, this is my skill set and this is their skill set. So how does this all going to work? So what they did was came up with this baseball card thing. This is your skill sets on a card. So if you go into that, these are the people that are available and these are the skill sets we need. So you take two of them and one of them and one of them and make a team. And they went, this is great. Now we're getting a full suite of people to come out with the best outcome. Yeah. It's just the small things you don't think about, Because, and a lot of people don't have that luxury because companies aren't that large. But that's getting the outside influences, like having accountants or lawyers, or potentially even a business consultant to look at different aspects, or even, having a board that has someone that's totally removed from the company itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had, so we are all engineers in our company. All the directors are engineers, and it was exactly about that. We probably need someone external because we may be great at engineering, but to a degree, some more than others, we all have understanding of finances, understanding of accounting. But there's some very specific things on legal terms, on accounting terms, that if you don't get the right advice, you're wasting your own money. So we ended up having a team of people that help us. We had an independent director for a couple of years. And now we're actually looking at getting sort of like a board advisor. Just being a director in New Zealand has a whole bunch of implications that many people don't want to sign up to, particularly in the construction industry, which is tough, I suppose. So for us, having someone that will bring an outside view into the business that is more business oriented than us driving into the little operational thing, it's great because it gives you that eagle's eye to go like, oh, I haven't thought about that. Again, it's someone asking the odd question because they haven't seen it before, so they'll ask you a question like, oh, why do you do this? Oh, I don't know. Oh, we did it because of this. Oh, have you thought about that? And you go like, oh, great.
Sometimes it's just tweaks,
and
sometimes it's...
Yep. But it's, I suppose anyone can do it. I don't think you need to be a big company to do that. It's just about acknowledging what are your strengths. And, I read a couple of books that are Good to Great and Built to Last, and it's about having the people with the right skills doing the right job, and also knowing that the fact that I'm an owner and I'm an engineer, I may not be the best engineer, or I may not be the best at managing certain aspects of the business, and not everyone has to do everything. We all have a strength, and it's a lot easier for you to excel at what you like than just trying to do a bit of everything.
That's a good point as well.
There's a name for that. It's called it's a best at practice.
Yeah, there's a big that a lot of people say, this is the thing, you should always work on your weaknesses. It's like that. I see it as the 80-20 rule, and I used to tell my team, it's like, you need to work on your weaknesses, but you have to work on your strengths as well. The problem is, if all you do is work on your weaknesses, your benefits coming out of that is going to be extremely low because it's such a graft. You still need to do strengths, and you'll see great benefits, which will keep you doing both. Because otherwise, you'll lose interest. You'll be like, I'm not getting anywhere because my weaknesses are still weaknesses. But
well, I think for everyone, from a business owner to someone that is developing their own career, it's exactly that. It's if there's something that you're really good at it, keep doing it and keep improving. But also, don't limit yourself just to that. You need to open your spectrum and get to understand other things. I think for everyone, one of the key things for me, anyone that's looking at potentially in the future investing into a business, doing some basic accounting. And if you want to go and do an MBA, I think that'd be great. But for a lot of people don't understand how businesses work. And I think that changes your perspective about everything when you go about your daily things.
I totally agree, because being a Sparky, like, all I knew was trades, and I was like, start a business, be fine, just labour only, whatever, get paid more money, great.
Yeah.
I moved into facilities and then decided to do a business career. As soon as I started that, it just, my whole world changed. I didn't even know the whole finance. I knew stocks were around, but I didn't know about hedge funds or that whole investment banking, or even how to read a balance sheet or income statement. I was like, how would I be able to have a business? I really know nothing about it. You know,
Yeah.
and it's a one person thing. Like most of your money goes into paying professionals to do all the stuff for you. So, and there's so many courses out there. It doesn't have to be a degree. It doesn't have to be a master's. It can be a small certificate. And the thing is, people will be, I think, blown away by about how much they know to a degree, but how much it invigorates them to get more into the business and to understand more. But the amount of work is horrific. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say it's easy. It is getting hard, and it takes the graft. So but if you start in a business, just get amongst
You have
it.
to.
You just
You
have to
have
do
to.
it. So
Yeah.
that's very, very good advice. Yeah,
That's one of the things. One of the guys, one of the young guys, came to me about a year ago, and he said, "Oh, look, I'm thinking about doing a master's. I want to specialize in such and such engineering, because I want to get chartered." And I said, "Look, I think you're a really clever guy, and my advice to you would be don't don't spend time getting chartered. Spend time into learning how businesses work, because the more you understand how businesses work, the quicker you can climb up the ladder and start making your own way and getting into business yourself. And that gives you, it's not for everyone, right? But it gives you the ability of
yeah.
picking and choosing a little bit. And it's also not all roses, right? I say pick and choose. I'm a minority shareholder on a company, so
Don't play it down, mate. Don't
working
play it
your way.
down. Talked about imposter syndrome before.
No. I'm very happy. I actually had a chat with I had my folks over visiting us, and I actually said to my dad, I'm very proud of where I got to in a relatively short term for us living away from family and support. In the last 12 years, we've actually did a huge amount of stuff. So I'm well happy with what I've done. Um, could I do better? Possibly, but it's all about how much effort you want to put into certain things. I think when my kids were born, to me, they are the first thing, and they come before anything else. I used to work really long hours. Um, if I'm not picking up my kids from kindy or school in the afternoon, I feel that I'm not doing the right thing. So it's about prioritizing different things at different points of life. And then that comes handy having business partners that are at a different stage in life, because they can do stuff that I can't.
And it's interesting with the whole flexible working arrangement, but there's still a lot of companies out there that don't understand, and most of them have been through those steps, and you're like, it's not the old days. It's like
It's very
you actually
generational.
you go home and you spend time with your family. You don't sit at work for 50 billion fucking hours a night. But yeah, it is. It's totally different. Yeah. I think, and that has set, I suppose, the standard for, shall we say, this generation, is that you want to spend a bit more time. Potentially, your parents were working two jobs to keep the house afloat and do things to make sure that you had what you needed.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of families out there that are working multiple jobs that still can't get ahead as well. So it's good, I suppose, to see a bit of that graft, because you have to do the graft, don't you?
Yeah.
To get somewhere. And also, it's a thing that comes up all the time. It talks about what is it? The grandfather drives a Toyota or something, shall we say, and then the father drives a Mercedes, and then the son drives the Ferrari, and then the grandson is back to the Toyota, because they have lost the graft, to spend all the money.
Yeah.
That's one of the way of putting it. There's another analogy that goes with it. You can put it anyway, but it's the concept. If you haven't done a little bit of hard work to get the money, you're never going to appreciate it, I suppose.
No.
And
Correct.
sort of like life in general, isn't it? You got to work at life. It's not just going to come up and hand itself to you every day.
No, that's about it. I think, to me, my approach in general to everything is earning your stripes. When I worked, I went from working for Beta to working for my dad, and it is tough to work for your father because
Oh,
everyone looks at you like, oh, you're your father's son. I'm like, I felt that I had to work 10 times harder just to prove everyone that no one was giving me anything a free lunch,
yeah, the
Um,
golden spoon.
yeah, but and I think it was really good because I ended up doing things that then sort of forged how I want my team to grow. I want them to work with the guys on site and earn the stripes. And for a 26-year-old fresh out of uni to go and tell a 50-year-old tradesman, oh, you need to do this way, that's impossible, right? But if they work together and the young guy shows them that they are willing to learn from them, that's how you build those relationships. And in anything that we do in life, work, it's all about building relationships, building trust, and getting people to do what you want them to do.
Exactly right. I had that same thing. I went into facilities when I was 26, 27. So getting off the tools, obviously a total different world. Sort of starting from the bottom, I suppose, and working your way up, but still having a good understanding of everything. Obviously, computers were sort of a way, other than doing games in it, was very difficult. But no, it was just trying to get the respect because a lot of it, and the problem with our industry is everyone's a man, and most of them are old, and they all think they know better. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough industry, and yeah, we need more diversity.
Yeah,
It's so hard to get that because it'll change the dynamics drastically, but it's going to take generations, I think, to get to
yeah,
that point. Sadly, yeah, because it's not how society drives people, and it needs to become more predominant at school that you can do different things, and this isn't just for males, and you get a few coming around, but yeah, it's sort of like law with my wife. It's obviously been a male dominated industry forever, and obviously there's a lot of females in there, but still there's that it's the old boys type of club thing going on that makes life
yeah.
difficult. And I can't say it's not there because it's everywhere, isn't it? Sadly.
It is there whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
just make things hard.
no, exactly right. But, you want to break those norms down, and yeah, it's a challenge. We going back to that whole, you are your father's sonny type thing, and that's something I like to talk about or touch on in every podcast. Is that people in your position in both aspects when you're younger and also having your own businesses that New Zealand and what I've found with people posting comments on my social media around this podcast is we're trying to break down that tall poppy syndrome where people have to should need to understand that most people aren't given things. They work extremely hard for it, and they've done some things that have made more sense than others, and there is an opportunity for everybody out there
Yeah,
to do something. It doesn't mean that like you're going to be potentially the best at something, but you can actually try. There's people out there that will support you. The
yeah.
whole point of this is to try and give people insights into the world of people that have done well and have businesses or are good at certain areas, or just open your mind to different opportunities.
Yeah.
So
I think New Zealand is probably a good place for people to try and to do that. Where I come from, work is really hard because there's 40 million people, there's about
yeah,
50% unemployment. And you go, well, if, for me, but when I was working for my dad, if I wasn't doing a 10, 11 hour day, someone would come and take my job because they were willing to do so, right? And I think one of the things that I noticed moved into New Zealand, having a chat with supervisors and tradesmen and even people in engineering, I felt initially that Kiwis in general didn't have the drive to grow their career, right? And I thought from my background, I thought, oh, this is people are a bit flat, they just don't want to grow. And then it sort of gelled in me the fact that it's all about what do you value, and talking to this. I remember quite vividly talking to this site supervisor. He got offered a higher role, and he was like, "Nah, nah, I'm happy. I don't want the extra stress. Um, I earn enough to do everything that I want to. I don't need to earn more. And I went, actually, that's a great philosophy, because at the end of the day, work is a means to an end, right? It's about putting food on the table and doing something that kind of makes you happy to a degree, because otherwise it would be boring to do it. Um, and it kind of dawned on me, and I went, it's not actually that people are flat, is that they get content a lot easier, and probably because I think New Zealand never has gone through a dark time in their economy.
Yeah.
The economy I grew up in, mate, it's a wave. You go rock bottom and top of the crest within 7 years every time. In fact, there's a lot of European countries that send their growing managers to manage branches in Argentina or South America in general, because it toughens them to be able to cope with fluctuating economies and fluctuating circumstances. And I actually realized that it's about that. Is that people in New Zealand perhaps don't necessarily have had that exposure of having to earn or having to fight for something and give it its value. But I don't see it as a bad. I mean, for me, it was great. I mean, I came and look, I worked my ass. But 12 years after coming into New Zealand, I own a decent percentage in a company, and I came here with nothing. Right, the money that I brought ran out within less than 2 months, and here I am 12 years later.
There we go. It's a bit of a success story when you think of it, isn't it? I think living in New Zealand and Australia, as you sort of point out, or first world countries, full stop. Like you say, what is a 50% unemployment or some horrendous rates? People live in shanties, and have no money. Crime is prolific, like murders and just everything.
Yep.
You don't even want to know about.
Yep.
And that's why people flock or try. I wouldn't say flock, try to get into the countries, and some do and some don't. And you sort of take a step back and you think, we're extremely lucky, like a lot of these people cry like, I've got no money, and the government gives you money, they give you housing, they give you a lot of countries don't do that.
Yeah.
It's
some countries just can't afford to do that.
No, exactly right. It's not because they can't or they don't want to. It's just they can't. But that's a whole
yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you take a step back and you take that concept, and that's, I suppose, in a way, why people move. And obviously, I've moved here because we have other opportunities. It's a different beast. New Zealand does have good, has bad stuff, but it also doesn't have opportunities in certain areas that we want to grow into. And we
I think New Zealand is a little town. It is, So I think New Zealand as a whole is now 4.5, 5 million people. I come from a city that is 8 million people. I love it. I love it here. I think the pace. I did feel the change in pace when I came. Right now, it's all about what you know, right?
Yeah.
Right now, I feel that some days I'm hectic, and probably in the scheme of things, if I was still back home, this wouldn't be hectic at all. But it's all about what you're used to and what's the norm for you. Then that becomes what you expect.
Right. And I think that's why a lot of people leave and then come back and go, it's actually
not too bad.
Yeah, a lot of people say New Zealanders are very relaxed.
Yeah. Well, I reckon they are. Our industry in construction is tough. It is very tough. But I still believe that it's chill compared to other places in the world.
Yeah, and it's drastically changed since I was on the tools. Well, we used to do overtime, weekends, and you get paid for it. Now, people don't want to pay the money. There's no penalty rates or anything like it. It just blows me away. I'm like, you expect people to do things. They're going to give up time for money. That's really what working is. And they want to get a bit out of it. You come to work on weekend. We're just going to give you the same rate we did, for the other 50 hours you did this week. Because, No, I just want to be at home with my
Why?
family. Yeah. Where's the
Yeah.
benefit to it? Yeah. So it's weird. I didn't know it had changed that much until, I sort of got back into I wouldn't say the roots of it, but a different view from a different angle as well. And there is a level, and I don't know if I've grown up, as competency is drastically different. Like some of the things you see and hear, you're like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting. It's very interesting, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's to do with the full education system in the South, or there's just more people and less jobs. And it's just there's so
I think
many
it's a mix.
facets.
I think it's a mix of everything. I think the
Training.
one is the lack of training. New Zealand is struggling with workforce, so we are importing people, and we're importing all the people that we can, I suppose. Um, there's also, to a degree, there's also a bit of the markets driving cheaper prices, and cheaper prices means
Yeah.
that I get put in front of me a set of drawings that was done by a junior, maybe a senior spent 5 minutes on it, and I look at it and I go like, this holes everywhere. And I can't get angry, right? Because that's what the client drove by saying, oh no, that price for that design is too expensive. You need to be cheaper. Well, to make it cheaper, instead of a guy at $250 an hour, it'll be done by a guy at $100 an hour. Simple, right?
Exactly right. We drive that reduction in price where we should be accepting better quality, which gives people more time to support others. Which it's always going to be the case, though, isn't it? Sadly, it happens everywhere. We're willing to go. Like I was living in Browns Bay, mate. There was 4 $2 shops, and you're like. And they've all survived. You're like, what is going on? But you're like, I'm going to buy this. It'll be a couple of bucks. And
yeah,
I know it's going to last a year and I'll just buy another one.
Yep,
exactly. It's crazy mentality. But it's what's driven into you. It's cheap now. You don't foresee the future, and I think that's a few things about it. Probably it drives into business as well. You need to have a longer term, plan than a shorter, I buy this immediately, especially when you're buying tools and, longer term assets. Well,
my workshop.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we've been talking for over an hour, and I'm sure it's went down a different path than I thought, but it's been very good because, it's very interesting for, I suppose, people that want to, come to New Zealand and look at a different avenue of even coming from Argentina, because there's a lot of people like in Australia and in New Zealand that are from varying different countries, around the world, but also like South American countries as well. So,
yep.
and they can do very well and thrive. So, it's good to, see and speak to yourself and have that come out. But I think the last question, what would you say to the younger Andreas if you went to talk to him right now? What would be the advice you'd give him?
Probably 2 things. Drink less. No. No, I suppose the one piece of advice I would give young Andres would be to dare to try different things. I don't think I had that. I never had a mentor when I developed my career, and I never had someone that sort of forced me to try new things and learn different things. I ended up doing it by default by myself, but it's nice to have that. And even then, I would say to myself, go and ask someone to be your mentor. It is really good to find someone that can become your sounding board or your guide, and someone you trust. It doesn't need to work in your industry. It's just someone that you think is smart enough and can give you some advice. That's what I would do. I'd find myself a sounding board or a mentor earlier in life.
That is amazing advice. I totally agree with it. And that also comes with that fear of people will reject you. People will reject you because people have their own things going on, but someone will accept.
I'll take you.
And they'll take you. The thing is, you just got to keep asking. And the thing is, the picture, a list. Make a list of people that you feel are appropriate in your realm, people that aren't in your realm, and then just to ask them. And if they say no, ask someone else. If they say no, and the great thing about it is, you could still ask them if they're not interested, if they know someone that might be interested, or some type of, and they might even give you advice. And that key piece of advice and that point of time will, I suppose, an outside mentor type of, talk to this person. So I ended up with someone via a conversation because I forced it. I wanted someone to, bounce things off. So that worked well for me, but it was later. That's the thing. You have to get it when you're young, and you're still fresh, and you need a direction. And people, you just don't think about it.
Well,
so no, that's
it's just finding someone that will actually provide you that confidence to go on and do things that otherwise you probably waste 5 years waiting to go, I'm actually going to give this a go. And probably you could have done it. You could have very well done it 5 years prior.
This here has been on the back burner for a few years, and I just got to the point, and I was like, I just need to do it. And as I say, mate, like I've still got so many pieces to stick together to make it, like a proper, calling it my hobby, but a proper sort of experience, shall we say? But it's going to get there. And the thing is, we've got the content, and I'm just going to continue on. And comes back to, if it's not going to be good, I'll look back on this and go, what's going on? Like, what was I doing? Why have I got this funny green screen and I'm like fading in and out? But you'll learn. I'll learn from it. And, and the thing is, and I've saying to everyone, and the plan is to, probably down the track, I don't know how long, is to get people back and have a chat, and there's always going to be evolution on it. And not just for me, but for people that'll listen. Hopefully it's a lot. Maybe one, maybe two. We've got a few people listening so far, which has been great. And if one person gets one takeaway out of it, that's all that really I feel is probably that needed to happen, I suppose.
But giving you a bit back,
Exactly right. And we have a good yarn, and get to have a chat about shit in general, which is what it's all about. And as it evolves, it'll get more, I think, conversational, unscripted journeys, which might be interesting. But and just we've content is more content, but thank you very much. That advice is great, and I thank you very much for your time. And I'll throw a plug in there. No, it's good. It's good. As a plug in there, Economic Services. If you need air conditioning solutions, just hit me up and I'll reach out for you, and I'll give you some contact details. There we go. It's it's good. Thank you very much for coming on. Yeah, as I said, it's been great, and it's good for you to share your knowledge with myself and everybody else, and
everyone else,
and tell us your story, mate, because it's when you reflect on it, it's a massive journey, and what you've done, mate. You've got to be proud of yourself, and as you say, like the true on the weekend, your parents here, and you reflect and go, look where I've come, and look how much more you can do. Like you've already got.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
See you all soon.
Thanks for bearing with me.
Thanks for putting up with us. Hold on.